Hooray! Stream time! I'm gonna get things set up. And then well, things are already set up, but more set up. Okay, I sent out the Tumblr posting. I think that was all I had to do, right? So now I'm just gonna be chilling here, doing the waiting thing. Even though I'm talking. I know Soul doesn't do this, but I just want to. Maybe I should close some things on the computer. Yeah. I'm not sure how much of an impression it'll make on the computer's performance. Who cares, but whatever. This is also very much not a Soul thing to do. But I'm a bitch, so I just want to complain about things. That's a part of me. I'm sure someone can be ableist about that, but we'll get into that. I'm gonna finish drinking this tea that's cold, but it's fine. I'm very ambivalent about putting what things go inside the body. I'm not much of a consumer. That's one way to put it. I'll be honest, I'm like yawning here. I don't know what's been up with the body, but I've been so tired lately. So tired. It's a it's a pain. Cause maybe if I hadn't been so sleepy, I could have done a better job with this presentation, but who cares? Who cares? I'm not gonna be one who's gonna put off this video existing forever, you know? Better have a shit video than one that doesn't exist whatsoever, you know? While I'm waiting, mayhaps I'll just go onto Tumble and look through the drafts I have. Because there's things in there that Soul will save for me. Got some bugs in here. Jay Ferret is in here. Miku. Fish. Angels. See a post, I'm like, oh, reblog that one. Time's up, everybody. Put this shit away. It's my time to shine. Okay, well, so, you know, we're doing what the title says. I'm complaining about a video that's very ableist, towards people with NPD. And I hate it. I hate it so much. And I don't know if this is gonna fill out the time of 2 hours, because it's not really a proper presentation. It was meant to be a proper presentation, but, filling everything out, I was just at a point I was just, okay, it would be better if I just produced, like, the whole transcript, got it all down, and then I'll just, like, leave all the refutation stuff to just rambles, because I've done so much writing, and it's just, you know, what's the point? I'm just gonna be going through everything anyways, so I'll literally pull up a transcript. I'm not gonna play the video itself. Let's get this out of the way. I won't be playing the video itself. You can watch the entire video. I've linked an archived version of it in the description. Not the actual video, because I don't want to be giving it views. Because it's already got enough views, but you know, it's like a transcript was a way for me to get everything across without being... I mean, I guess technically it could still be copyright, but less so if it's just the transcript, and we can go through it, review it, I guess. And what else? And also because it's a good way for you to see that I'm not taking things out of context. All this shit that sounds terrible, it is just that way originally in the video. I'm not taking it out of context. It's just that bad. Yeah, but first off, let's just talk about the influence of this video first. Where was it? Here. Okay. So, listen, you can find the creator's name easily, but it's like I don't need to bring it up. But this creator has 1.25 million fucking subscribers. The video has 1 million views. And the audience approval is 98%. Like, only 2% of people dislike the video at most. And they're on Nebula, and they make a profit off of books too. So, and we'll note something about the books later, but basically this creator, I mean, it's not necessarily just the reach of the video, because a video can have a large reach and just be shit and not be received well. But this person, they get passed around, they get recommended, is the thing. She gets recommended in other people's videos. Funnily enough, in a good video that covered NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, she got mentioned at the end when she produced this video, and it's so bad, and she got recommended, and we can also go a bit into the transcript itself, but she's being presented like, oh, she really did her research for this video, where I could rewatch it. Maybe there's a citation somewhere, but as far as I can remember, and I've watched it back a couple of times now, there's no citations. None, no citations whatsoever in this, and it's just a bunch of bullshit. But what do you expect when people are talking about NPD? It's bad. But I just wanted to bring that up because, the influence... Oh yeah, hang on. I nearly forgot. I had notes here, so I wouldn't forget, but I nearly forgot anyways. But, something to note as well, if someone's gonna say it's like, oh, well, maybe she's like apologized for it. I do not think I've seen an apology for it. I mean, if she was sorry for it, then she would have taken it down, right? By now. But as far as I'm aware, no apologies for this video. We actually commented on this video to be like, this is a bad video and it's hurtful. I don't remember what exactly was in the comment. I'm pretty sure it was worded like harshly, but kind of benefit of the doubt. And it got taken down. And that was it was not like that far of like back ago. It the comic got purged. And I'm pretty sure if you were like, I wouldn't doubt it. I haven't read back the comments, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's a bunch of other ableist stuff about narcissists, right? Like not a good video, no like kind of back push in the comments. So it just gets to sit there with its influence and continuing to gain like viewers who are just gonna like the video and be like, oh, that was really informative, when it's bad. And I want to note as well, I haven't mentioned them directly. Again, you can find the video yourself, but a part of the reason why is because this creator got cancelled, but not over this. Not over this. It was over some like false claim about how she's racist or something, and she got dogpiled for that, and it was nothing. But this video has just been allowed to sit around. And it's so terrible. But that's all I have to say about this. So let's actually get into the thing itself. Here we go. Yes, so my little note is that the transcript the transcript is, there's actually like closed captions on the video, right? But the thing about, like, it made this easier, but but it wasn't formatted. It was all in lowercase, and like the text of like clips and stuff didn't have anything attached to it. So a lot of this formatting I did myself. I didn't care to make it perfect. I've just been so sick of looking at this. You have to understand, when you look at this for so long, you're gonna be like, I don't give a shit at this point. So I didn't format it perfectly, but you know, and here's everything. So you can tell that I'm not taking everything out of context, and like anything. This is all in the video. She goes on about like her sponsors and stuff. That's fair enough. Gal gotta make money. Gal gotta support herself. And then she goes on to talk about Loki. Another thing is that I haven't watched Loki because I don't give a fuck. So I'm just talking about the things with the context here, which I don't think that it's really necessary for like most of this stuff, because like a lot of the stuff that is said that is bad isn't really in relation to the I mean, it's like kind of, but you know, it opens up with talking, the subject of the video is the MCU, and it goes on this extended tangent about, oh, they're discussing like mental health a lot, right? Talking about PTSD in The Winter Soldier. Haven't seen that. Don't know shit about it. There's a lot of clips put in between everything, which is good. Unfortunately, I won't know what every clip is from, so, you know, whatever. So then it goes, but then we took a turn into an interesting mental disorder that is extremely popular as a character trait, but rarely discussed in fiction with Loki. Then, of course, there's discourse reacting to the text of the show. Is Loki a narcissist? And this is where the issues really start. Like, I would say that I really hate that people bring up narcissism as just, like, a descriptor, like, as a casual word to use. Because then people go, it's like, oh, I said that this person was, like, a narcissist, or was narcissistic, but I didn't mean it in reference to the disorder. And it's like, buddy, we all know that what you're saying is reflecting back on people with NPD. We all know it. So why you are trying to, like, cover it up is fucking baffling. But anyways, so is Loki a narcissist? Not narcissism or narcissistic personality disorder is one of the more common personality disorders. I didn't double check that actually, but you know, I wouldn't be surprised. So it is kind of surprising that it is so widely misunderstood. I wonder why. Especially in light of other mental illnesses like bipolar disorder or borderline personality disorder or PTSD gaining much wider awareness in the last 2 decades. Most people don't seem to have a lot of interest in it outside of demonizing it because usually they know a narcissist or several, and the perception of what NPD is basically that of a psychopath with particularly high self-esteem. So I mostly have an issue with the thing that gets flashed up on screen, but I will note that again, this is very painful to read with the context of the entire video. But this line, I know that emphasis is put on the no part, like it could be interpreted as her being like skeptical of it, but it really doesn't come off that way with the entire context of the video. But let me just say, if it wasn't abundantly clear, if you don't already know, you cannot diagnose people. Like, especially if you don't know the ins and out of a disorder. Like, people that get accused of being narcissists are usually just kind of shitty people in general, and being shitty has no reflection on if you're a narcissist. Listen, just don't go around assuming people have a certain like, it doesn't even matter. This is the thing. It doesn't even matter whether someone is diagnosed or not if they're acting like a shitty person. There's really no need to, like, try and diagnose someone as a narcissist in order for you to feel validated. Honestly, can I just say that this feels like there's some laundering going on where Lindsay is going like, oh, a lot of people think they know a narcissist, but but that's just what other people are saying. But yeah, and then she used the word psychopath. And and this is a lot. And this is a lot. I think I've talked about this on my Tumblr before, but I wrote it down here so you can clearly read everything. Side note, somehow the internet became convinced that psychopath and sociopath are outdated and ableist terms, but they're not. They're still in use. Just because words are in use does not mean that they are not outdated and ableist, because that's not how language works, okay? If we let the majority opinion dictate what language was okay to use, then we would still be using a lot of harmful words, okay? Don't let people giving you the argument, oh, other people use this word, be like a defense of it, because it doesn't make sense. You need to have more to say than, oh, it's the norm in order for something to be like defense. Like, that's not a good excuse. That's really bad. And then it goes on. A psychopath, not a okay, this is another thing. The writing, again, like we mentioned the closed captions being pretty not good, but in general, like, the way this screenshot, I copied this probably nearly exactly. I wouldn't doubt if I made a mistake, but I try to copy everything 1-to-1. But But it's just a psychopath, not a diagnosis, but a set of traits, including symptoms and specific behaviors. I think it's meant to say that it's not a diagnosis, like it's not in the DSM. I think that's what it's trying to say. But needless to say, the comparison to Stockholm Syndrome is really rough. Hello, Mantis. I'm complaining. I was just up to this point. It's this scene's awesome. I'll watch it once I'm more awake. Yes, do that. Or maybe just spare yourself this, to be honest, because this is it's really rough. Like, the first time I watched this video that I'm talking about, I actually couldn't finish it because it was really bad. So, maybe you don't need this in your life, this cursed knowledge of this video. Yeah, what was I gonna say? I was gonna say that, there's this point where it's talking about how it's trying to talk about, oh, psychopath is not a diagnosis, but it's still valid, right? And it mentions Stockholm Syndrome, which has to be the worst thing that you can mention, because I don't think that there's been a lot written about it, but there is some doubt shed on the validity of Stockholm Syndrome, because I looked into this. There's this video called Rethinking Stockholm Syndrome. It's a presentation, and I'm not going to speak on the conclusions of it, because I didn't get to look into a lot of talk about it. But it does feature the first-hand account of Kristen and Mark, who people probably aren't going to know this necessarily. But Stockholm Syndrome was created by this guy. It was first diagnosed after there was a hostage situation in Sweden, I think it was, where a bunch of people got held up at a bank, and they were in there for a while, and it's like, oh, by the time they came out, they were infatuated with the people holding them hostage. And oh, that's like Stockholm Syndrome. But again, so this video, Rethinking Stockholm Syndrome, this presentation, included the first-hand account of Kristen and Mark, who was there, and basically talks about how it's really fucking, like, fucked up the way that it's been presented, because the people inside, because this is only from Kristen, so I don't know what the others felt about the situation, but from Kristen's perspective, it was very reasonable to trust the people holding them hostage, more so than the police, who were being very, very incompetent. Like, oh boy, they basically had a false identification of the guy holding them hostage. I mean, before that, apparently a police officer came in and got humiliated right in front of the guy with the gun. So that was bad. And then it was followed up by them misidentifying the guy, trying to get his brother in, but it was the wrong guy, that they didn't identify him, so they didn't, like, it wasn't actually his brother, and he shot the guy, and so that's also pretty disheartening. And something to know about the situation as well is that it was originally one guy, but another guy got sent in because the first guy asked for him, and apparently that guy was kind of a plant who was told by the police, if you help keep people alive, if you keep this situation not, like, if you help de-escalate things, then I realize I'm explaining a lot of this, but it's just I found out about this and I want to share it. They is told if you help like keep things de-escalated, we will give you like an easier punishment. Like you'll be chill. So and this guy like told the people inside the bank that's what he was doing. So they didn't necessarily had to believe him. They could have mistrusted him, but that's you know he did actually end up helping, so it's reasonable that they would have been like, oh, this guy's like on our side, like, and at the end he got beaten up. Imagine this guy helping you through this situation, and then at the end some police officers who don't know shit beat the shit out of him at the end. Yeah, you would also be saying, what the fuck are you doing? Like, he didn't do anything wrong. So there's that. And one thing that was horrifying, which, since I'm going into this, I actually was like, oh, I shouldn't talk about this a lot, but let me bring up something, is that it was also very unique because the hostages could call people outside, and so you kind of got some live interaction between them and the media press. And Kristen called up the actual fucking, like, head of the country to ask for help, and and did I write it down? Maybe I wrote it down in a different thing. I'm sure I had it written down now. Yeah, okay. So something about it was that she called up the president and or whoever it was and was like, "Hey, can you please help me?" And there is records of this apparently, but they got retracted from certain press releases, so it's not necessarily the most widely known thing, but the fucking guy on the phone told her that you will have to content yourself, that you will have died at your post, because he wasn't gonna do shit about, and he didn't care if she like died or any of the people that died. And they retracted that. And that would also, yeah, that would make you feel like absolute crap. And then at the end, after you've been treated this badly consistently and had such doubts about the state of the police and how effective they really are, then some guy comes in and says that you have Stockholm syndrome and you're in love with your... It's also incredibly misogynistic, because she also apparently got asked like nearly immediately whether she had had sexual intercourse with the people holding her hostage. Like, is that not just misogyny? And that's the thing the presentation goes into, how this is kind of a misogynistic narrative. I wouldn't say it's entirely that, because, it goes into different made-up conditions, like battered wife syndrome, things that aren't officially in the DSM or anything, that they're all, like, misogynistic concepts, which I'm not sure if I would say that, since a lot of people identify with them, but still, it gives you something to think of. So basically, what I'm trying to get from all that is that it is very telling that trying to defend, like, psychopathy and the use of the term, that you would compare it to Stockholm syndrome. And I want to know, I did check when this came out. This video was well after this presentation, and you could look up this. This only took very surface level research. It's literally, you go to a page, you go to a criticism section, boom, you can find the presentation. not being able to do that basic amount of research, and again, there's no citations in this fucking video. What are you doing? You're meant to be, like, verified. Like, there's a proof to your quality of content, people vouching for you, and it's just not there. So yeah, that's a whole rant about that little rabbit hole you can go down. And then it brings up sociopath, the term sociopath, which is also but yeah, is used more referred to someone, and this is another thing, like, you know, if you just misspell things and, like, you get certain things wrong, it's, like, fine, just so long as you don't get key things wrong. Like, it's APD that's not antisocial personality disorder. That is something else. That's auditory processing disorder. Antisocial personality disorder is ASPD. So that's just wrong. And then brings up, you see the word psychopath pop up a lot in both the medical community and criminal justice, which is another thing that I highlighted because, again, just because something is used a lot and is the norm does not mean that it's right to use. But also, criminal justice, this is very vague, and it's probably because a lot of stuff about, you know, criminals and psychology is kind of made up. Like, I looked it up, and there is subjects where it's a crossover between, where you have literal criminology, I think it is, but you have a crossover between looking at crimes, looking at psychology, and that's more discussing why crimes happen. And then there is, like, other subjects which go into different things. But a thing you should know is that, like, you know those people that will go off about, oh, you know, I can tell you how we found that, like, how we can tell people are lying. You cannot. That is a lie. A lot of behaviors and stuff, it's just not going to apply the same to every single person. Like, so if someone tells you, oh, I can tell if someone's lying, no, you cannot. No, you cannot. Unless they are somehow very, very bad at it, or, like, usually you need to have objective proof that someone is lying. You can't just tell from someone's behavior if they're lying or not. Like, usually the behavior that's suspicious is just anxiety and stuff, and then police will get false confessions, so then it reaffirms this narrative when really they're not doing shit. So be very careful about what psychology you trust. This kind of criminal justice here, they're a bunch of cops. Like, I'm sorry, don't trust cops. They're full of bullshit. Good cops don't stay cops for long. I just wanted to highlight that. But yeah, then it goes... But the reality is there is no consensus on what these words mean exactly, even though they're thrown out all the time. And the fact you can type that and then just... and then just move on and go, oh, well, here's the distinctions. What do you mean there's no common consensus and you're still gonna tow it around? And this is another thing I want to mention, that there are things such as maladaptive daydreaming, which are, like, tossed around as words, and they're not officially, like... And they're not officially a part of DSM or anything. Another thing would be complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And the difference between those and this that I want to highlight, because some people might be, oh, well, then that means every single thing is fake. No, no, no. Psychopathy and sociopathy have lasted way, way longer. They have been around way, way longer. And if they were gonna be a part, like a formal diagnosis or something, it would have probably happened by now, right? And it's not like they're not sort of brought up in the DSM. They actually are kind of mentioned, but definitely not as like a part of the official diagnosis, as a part of the whole thing. Like this whole thing about the differences between them, like you could just have things described as, I mean, aside from the fact that this draws a heavy comparison between having ASPD and having criminal, like being a criminal, and that's bad and we shouldn't promote that. ASPD, like, oh, so psychopaths as sociopaths, that's just a personal label that, you know, if you want to apply it to yourself, you can do that. But in terms of diagnosis, you would just tick off different criteria on the diagnosis, and you would still have the same diagnosis as someone else. It's not, this is really just ableism. Like, and I want to say that throughout this whole thing, it's like, oh, like, I'm not gonna deny that people with disorders, like, yes, you can have a criminal record, or criminality, in the case of ASPD, is a part of the diagnosis, as part of the criteria, but this heavy, like, this paragraph, which has such a heavy-handed association drawn between the two, about how they are angry and violent, where some are like, oh, if they did have a crime, they are better at hiding the evidence. Don't do this shit. Don't. Yeah, and again, fairly mainstream. Just because something is mainstream doesn't mean it's right. And either way, this... And here's this stick. Here's this stick, which is specifically made for someone like me who hangs out on Tumblr and shit. Either way, the term psychopath is still in common use and not outdated, so feel free not to clog up my comments with a bunch of, well, actuallys about psychopathy that you learned on Tumblr in 2014. So, like, you're just wrong. Lindsay is just wrong about this. And I've mentioned her name. I'm not mentioning it in the title itself or anything, but I will, like, again, you can find this. It's not like you're not gonna find out if you're interested in this. But anyone who does a dig at Tumblr is really... Don't make digs at Tumblr for being, like, playing on this, oh my gosh, they're just a bunch of woke SJWs. Like, that is a very right-leaning take on it, and like, you should know that Tumblr is a bunch of marginalized people. I have not seen a community of, like, people with NPD that's really, like, that decent other than Tumblr. Like, I have tried looking up, you try looking up things about narcissism on other places, and it's not from people with NPD. I can tell you that much. The one place where you will instantly find people with NPD is on Tumblr. So this specific dig at Tumblr is so underhanded. It's so wrong. And this will also come up later as well with a different dig. But it's like telling people not to trust people with NPD or NPD traits. Like, telling them not to trust them because, oh, they're just a woke SJW that hangs out on Tumblr and complains about things from 2000. Like, come on. But yeah, narcissists are primarily defined by their lack of empathy. I think that's a part of the previous. So it's like kind of disproving it. Which she does do some disproving in this. So that's kind of good. But this next part is also pretty infuriating. So there are so many fictional narcissists in media. Narcissists make great antagonists and often, sometimes even fun protagonists. It's fun to watch characters who are blind to their own faults and lack self-awareness. True, it is fun to watch characters who are blind to their own faults and lack self-awareness. I imagine that's true for people who watch media. I don't necessarily watch media, but I can imagine this is so. But this next line, in comedies, narcissists are comedy gold because we enjoy the juxtaposition of how they see themselves versus the reality of how other people see them. So you wouldn't say this about other conditions, would you? Would you, like, think about this. Would you say this about a condition like autism? Like, oh, people with autism are so funny because of their traits that they I don't know, that they stim or something. Like, would you say that? No, you wouldn't. But here it's framed like, oh, it's like narcissist, so it's fine. No. And I'm not saying that your traits can't be used as like a part of the comedy of something, but this, like, oh, narcissists are cool because, like, they're funny. Like, that's meant to be... No, we're not respectable just because, like, you're someone who exists and you deserve respect. No, you're funny, so that's why you should have a place in media. Are you kidding me? Are you serious? Don't say this shit. God. God above. You seeing this shit? Yeah, and here's a really big issue with the video. You know, earlier, Lindsay does this thing where she's like, oh, well, like, there's misconceptions about NPD and I'm gonna disprove them. And she does do that a little bit. But she's like, oh, I'm definitely really on people with NPD's side, like, on our side. When all the times that she says that a character is, like, narcissistic, like, he's a narcissist, Loki is a villain. Thanos is a villain. The third guy that she introduces is a villain. And it talks about Thanos. Mentions Thanos. Thanos is a narcissist. And she mentions this thing about how narcissists can't see children as anything more than extensions of themselves and can't love them. Like, what the actual fuck? What the actual fuck? And no, I am aware that a lack of empathy is, like, a part of the diagnosis and there's other issues, but you could still feel like, what is this? Honestly, you think no narcissist ever had, like, they're all incapable of not loving people genuinely. This is the thing that keeps coming up in this video. Oh, narcissists can't love people genuinely, and if they do, then that means that they're not a narcissist. What? That's so fucked up in the... Oh my gosh. I would hate to be a parent who's dealing with this fucking disorder and all the complexities that come with it, and have someone say that you don't really love your children because you're a narcissist. Like, Jesus. How awful. Also, hello. Welcome. I'm 40 minutes into this and we're not even that... Oh my gosh, look at the point where... You can't see that, but if I'm, like, only maybe a sixth of the way through this entire video script, let's just keep moving with me complaining about things. So YouTuber goes off about, you know, a narcissist sees children as an extension of themselves and loves them. This is a thing that'll happen throughout the video. I haven't noted this, but there's this one clip of Thanos throwing like his daughter off a cliff, and it's like played over and over whenever she wants to mention like narcissists not really loving their children. Like, gosh. But yeah, talking about how narcissists only love people conditionally. What the fuck? Um, and bring it back to this thing where the only people she calls like true narcissists are always villains. Um, Anyone who's up to the tiptoe of a narcissist or is like has narcissist traits, not quite a narcissist, is always the heroes, right? Because, oh, I guess if they're like a good character, then they can't be a narcissist. Like, fuck. It's so bad. Um, and the thing about the clips that she uses, sometimes they don't really apply. Like, I think when you type it out, like when you listen back to it, she's it seems like there's a misinterpretation that could be happening here, where if you see how I've written it, you can tell that Tony Stark is talking to this reporter, and this reporter says like, oh, like, I never said you're a superhero. And he goes, that would be outlandish, and then it's meant to be a pause, and then he says fantastic, and I think it's meant to be, oh, fantastic, that nobody is implying that. But I think there might be this subtle misinterpretation where it's like, oh, fantastic, it would be great if someone accidentally thought I was a superhero, which is just not what's happening in the shot. But I'm not sure if, like, everything else really speaks for itself. This is just my guess, because sometimes the clips don't line up properly in terms of like actually matching what she thinks is saying, so that's something that could be off. uh I feel like I might be making gross noises throughout this. I talk a lot, okay? So I apologize. I need lots of mucus. But so before we get into Loki, let's walk through what might qualify for someone having NPD using a character who I have no clue about other than the shit that's presented. So I'm not gonna speak on that. But this basically just goes through the DSM and then shows clips. But again, some of the clips don't really match what's being talked about. This first one, narcissistic personality disorder is defined by at least 5 of the following 9 criteria. A grandiose sense of self-importance. The clip goes on about how this character is imagining that she was having this whole thing with someone, and she's like kind of made up what happened. That is not a grandiose sense of self-importance. That's not what that means. Like, this example is just bad. And then goes on to the next one. A preoccupation with fantasies of unlimited power, a brilliance, beauty, or ideal love. And this character is going off at their child, being like, oh, but there has been a lot of love even though you've been hurt. Oh, I love you. So that's, I think that's meant to be talking about ideal love. That's not really exactly, I can kind of see how you could extrapolate that, but that's really not what that's meant to mean. If I understand correctly, I think it's meant to be, I wouldn't know this because I'm not, but just the idea of having a really great partner. Ideal love, that's meant to be referring to a partner, I'm pretty sure, a romantic interest that is your ideal love. that you want. That's not meant to be about gaslighting your family member. It's bad. And there goes a belief for he or she is special and unique and can only be understood by or should associate with other special or high status people or institutions. Not every clip is wrong. I think this one is pretty accurate. But this one, a need for excessive admiration, it kind of fits with, like, oh, I have to win this kind of competition she's going off about, and she's using her child to do it. But it's the inclusion of, like, the manipulation, like, that's not a part of wanting admiration. Like, you can just want admiration. You don't have to manipulate people to get that. Like, geez. And then a sense of entitlement, which this I have no clue. I have no clue. Maybe in context this makes sense, but I have no clue how this is meant to, this clip that she played about this character telling someone that. I have no clue. I could not tell you. And then there's interpersonally exploitative behavior, which this doesn't quite read right to me. So I included what the DSM-5 actually reads. Is interpersonally exploitative, takes advantage of others to achieve his or her own ends. I'm not sure what would be a good example of this, but it doesn't feel like it should be this, because this is also pretty abusive, and it's, gosh, we could go off about how many things here are abusive all day, but yeah, a lack of empathy, this is fine, it's whatever. Here's another instance, though, of including things that are emotionally abusive. It's where it kind of fits, but it's like, why are you trying to be, like, act like an advocate for people with NPD when you're demonizing them, like, with all this shit? It's so bad. Demonstration of arrogant, horny behaviors. Yeah, that's fine. And yeah, she mentions, so these are DSM criteria, which they are, and I have no issue with this, but then she goes, but there are many more behaviors and symptoms associated with the disorder, and this is where it really, like, sinks in that she doesn't have any citations. Where did she get all of the following shit that she's gonna talk about? I don't know. I could not tell you where specifically it came from, or what kind of backing there is to it. As far as I'm aware, jack shit. Probably from those, like, oh, recovering from having narcissistic parents books, or whatever the fuck they are. But here we go. Narcissists don't feel responsible for their own conduct, but they will always hold others accountable for any transgression, real or imagined. First of all, that first part is bullshit. I know I, for one, feel responsible for my conduct, because you shouldn't have bad conduct. But they will always hold others accountable for any transgression, real or imagined. So it's like this hypothetical narcissist that doesn't give a shit about anything they do hates you specifically. They have a comically short memory for their own behaviors. Don't know how you would know that if you're not a narcissist or in their brain, or if anyone's ever asked a narcissist, hey, do you have, like, do you actually remember, okay, like, alright, and will frequently rewrite history to suit their own narrative. And then uses this clip, which is meant to be cute, but it's really not. Narcissists are always perpetual, like, this is a thing where this ties in very much to the early comment about, oh, don't trust Tumblr users, when they talk about, oh, this thing is ableist, don't trust them. This is the other thing. She goes off about how narcissists are perpetual victims and use the language of social justice to reassure others their victimhood is quite real. Which this example given right after is not very relevant, because that's not the language of social justice. That's a very conservative point to say, I gave my life to my children, you know, I love you so much. That's not progressive shit. That's not things progressive parents say. But again, this whole thing, it's like, me making this video, I'm calling the video ableist. I'm using the language of social justice, aren't I? So that must mean that what I'm saying is bullshit, and, you know, fuck me if I feel offended by your video where you are a piece of where you're saying all this horrible shit. Like, fuck you if you feel bad about it. And how dare you call me ableist? Using the language of social justice to... Like, what the fuck? It's so bad. So deflective. Jesus. Jeez. And it goes on something about how this is the shield, like... Something about how victimhood and vulnerability are not the... I genuinely don't understand what that's meant to mean, so we'll just move on from that. But while narcissists frequently frame themselves as victims of injustice, they tend to be outraged when other people claim victimhood. Okay, so there are narcissists where like people with NPD, where... You know, if you follow a confession blog, you will know that people, yes, they will feel upset when the attention is taken off them. Makes sense. But they will keep that to themselves, and it's like not in... Okay, like... how do I go into this? The thing about the DSM is that it's meant for healthcare professionals, so it relies on prior knowledge. Yeah. We can honestly go into a lot about the DSM. I mean, even me, like, I'm saying this shit about the DSM where I'm like, I don't take issue with it, like people using it as a citation for, how do I put this? Like, I think it's noteworthy for being to the professional standard that psychologists will refer to, but there is some issues with it, and diagnosing that's kind of outside the scope of this, talking about gender disparity in diagnoses, some diagnosis. I don't remember exactly what the disorder was, but there was one personality disorder where it's overdiagnosed in indigenous peoples, because it would be like, oh, if you're overly combative to institutions, which you would be if you were fucking colonized and you had a lot to say about the injustices of the system, you would be very combative to the institutions. And, you know, no secret that diagnoses can be used to get people institutionalized and inflict violence on people. But again, that's there's a lot that can be said about it that is so beyond the scope of this, and honestly, this video that doesn't have research done into it, which I mentioned Stockholm Syndrome, that there was nothing here really talking about how that's called into question. But yeah. Usually the ICD is better, to be honest. I don't actually know about the ICD. I think we've tried to find some shit about it, but I just wasn't able to. I'll take your word for it. But yeah, what was I up to? Oh, I remembered why I specifically highlighted this as well, though. It's yeah, Stockholm syndrome is BS. BS. But I specifically highlighted this because this is really fucked up when you know background knowledge on NPD. Um, Personality disorders, there's reasonable evidence to conclude that a lot of personality disorders are the result of trauma. And as you know, if you have been abused, you are likely to end up in abusive situations yet again. Um, so to have this thing where it's like, oh, don't trust narcissists because they they want to counter with their own narrative against all the reasonable like neurotypicals, and they will just lie about like, holy shit, is that not setting a situation up for victim blaming? That is absolutely like gross. um I can't even imagine the people that must have been in this situation before because of like this kind of narrative that people with NPD just lie about being victims. Like, holy shit. How disgusting. And that's why I highlighted that pretty much. and then using Shane Dawson, which I don't know anything about Shane Dawson, but like, geez, could you not use him to represent people with NPD? Like, goddamn. Narcissists also are capable of love in the way that neurotypical people are, which is why it's so hard for the children of narcissists to admit that their parents are in fact narcissists, because it's difficult to accept that your parent doesn't really love you in a way that a parent should, because they don't see their children as autonomous people but as extensions of themselves. Yeah, there's a lot of this that I previously highlighted, but but no, like, people with NPD can easily like love others. Jeez, are capable of love. Like, goddamn. And talking about, oh, the children of narcissists, where people will just diagnose their parents even though they don't have any clue. I say, this is the thing why I say that, like, what are the chances that this research is pulled from those books where it's like how to recover from your shitty narcissistic parents, and that's why it's all weird like this. Like, oh. uh, yeah, and then it goes on to, they're indifferent to any harm they cause. Interpersonal boundaries to a narcissist are a form of abuse, just making up shit about how people with NPD are just abusers. Love isn't love to a narcissist isn't caring for another person's emotional needs but controlling them. Again, making things up about narcissists. I love to see it. And then again, the classic that with that said, there's a lot of misconceptions about narcissism. Like, nothing before that was a misconception. But no, there are some things in here that Lindsay brings up that are good. So yeah, there's the misconception that narcissists are extremely self-confident. This is true. People will be overly confident to hide the fact that they are not very confident at all, really, and that's why you need a lot of excessive admiration. And then it brings up obsessive self-loathing as a form of narcissism. There is something that is discussed in narcissistic, like, circles of people with NPD, covert narcissism. This is definitely a thing. But I do have personal reservations about this and the kind of general narrative of how this influences how people perceive, like, depression. For instance, that people are selfish for disliking themselves. Like, I generally just don't think that it's good to bring this up. Like, I don't know how to slide it in between people with NPD who do relate to this and do have this experience, but also having to take in the fact that this kind of rhetoric is used to talk down to people with, like, you know, you just have low self-esteem, and people will talk about how, oh, aren't they so selfish? Like, just a horrible thing to say about someone with depression. Yeah, I don't really have thoughts on that. I would say that in general, if you're someone who's making a video like this where this is so, like, not well researched at all, then don't bring this up. You don't have the tact to be able to bring this up. But yeah, then it goes on. Narcissists are usually oblivious to the hurt they cause others. Hurtful behavior is just collateral damage to having their emotions. I got cut off for a second. I don't know. It doesn't matter. You can read it. Hurtful behavior is just collateral damage to having their emotional needs met. Yeah, just horrible to say. Misconception 2: narcissists are evil. I'm glad that she says this, even though she does basically say, oh, all narcissists, like, all real narcissists are villains, like, so, but at least she's kind of doing her job. But yeah, narcissist personality disorder does not implicate any off-kilter moral barometer. True. There is nothing wrong with a narcissist's impulse control or their ability to tell right from... This is something that's interesting, though. There's this thing where it's like, oh, narcissists, like, are completely in control of themselves and they can discern right from wrong. But then they're also oblivious to the hurt they cause others. Like, it's very contradictory. From what I saw, this is clearly someone who has no idea what they're talking about. Yeah. Yeah. That's basically this video. It's someone saying that they know what NPD, like, everything about narcissistic personality disorder, and this is the video to watch if you want to learn about it. But then it's just a bunch of bullshit with no citations or anything. Yeah. Yeah, you got this contradictory, like, oh, narcissists can be good, but also here's everything that is the reason why you should think that they're just all abusive and shit, so it's very contradictory. But yeah, quite the opposite in some ways. Narcissists are not only able to discern right from wrong, but for the most part they want to do right, again, because they want to be liked. This is very... I'm glad that this is in the video at all. This is very, very true. I think many people I've come across, this is definitely the outlook. Like, sure, like, you'll get people like me that's a bit underhanded about things, but generally, of course I want to do good. That's, like, the way that people like you. And that's, like, not a bad, like, and that's, like, plus good in the world. Like, who cares why someone is doing good? Unless they're doing it for some ulterior... But if they're doing it for, like, an ulterior motive, you get what I mean. You get what I mean. Like, people can be good because they want to be liked, and that can be very fine, and you know, I'm just glad that's in the video at all. Also, misconception free, all narcissists come from a background of privilege. This is another good thing to mention, that yes, people with MPD, statistically, it's just like, no, you're not gonna be wealthy just because like you're a person with MPD. And mentioning that it rarely emerges in people who come from stable, loving families. Yes, that is what I mentioned earlier about how trauma can cause personality disorders. So yes. It is often a result of trauma or emotional neglect. But then it goes back to conflation of narcissism with psychopathy. Using the term psychopathy at all, red flag. But it continues. She cannot stop talking about how narcissists don't really experience love like others. It just keeps coming back up. But this is particularly gross. Narcissists, especially female narcissists, actually live in a constant state of anxiety, and boy do they want you to know that. This is just misogyny. It's like, why are you in the middle of this video talking about MPD and you have to get a dig at specifically female narcissists? Like, what other reason is there than to just be misogynistic? Like, it's like, you think guys don't live in a constant state of anxiety either, and boy do they want you to know that. Like, excuse me? And of course, like, they're gonna present differently in different genders for like a multitude of different reasons. But this just like out of the blue dig at female narcissist. Oh my gosh. That one sentence alone has given me a headache. I know, right? Like, like, what the fuck? Yeah. And it goes into... Oh, by the way, this is a thing as well, is that it's the whole thing with gender as well, is that usually when people bring up, oh, here's the traits in a gender, it's always gonna be like female narcissists that get brought up, right? Like narcissistic mothers. It's not dads, because like guys are just assumed to be the default, and that's not good. Just if ever a script has like, and by the way, here's like a thing about women that is bad, like maybe rethink it. Have someone look over your script. This video was very much probably didn't have someone who looked over the script. Don't put that in there. So then it's going into psychopaths don't really care what others think about them. They don't care about their lives, and they don't experience empathy. I double checked the DSM-5. I thought that empathy was mentioned in ASPD's criteria, but I don't think it is. Let me recheck this. I have it open. A pervasive pattern of disregard for and violation of the rights of others, failure to conform to social norms, a deceitfulness as indicated by lying, uses of aliases, conning, impulsivity or failure to plan ahead, irritability and aggressiveness, reckless disregard, consistent irresponsibility, lack of remorse. There is a lack of remorse, but there's not... Empathy is not mentioned in ASPD's criteria. This is James Somerton's level of no, no, no. James Somerton. I mean, James Somerton original work, yes, but James Somerton, at least he plagiarized people and they would know what they were talking about. This is 100% this creator's own content. So that's unfortunate. Showing about the shit he did plagiarize, yeah. And the misogyny was included in that too. Oh. But yeah, the ASPD isn't really the focus of this, but there is this ableism towards people with ASPD too. Oh, so you don't have to worry about spelling. It's fine. I can understand what you're saying, so that's the main point. But yeah, there's just that dig, which is also ableist, but again, that's not. But it's mainly towards people with MPD, and AS people with ASPD are just kind of in the crossfire of this video. They just happen to get shot in the foot too. That's talking about how narcissists want want people to like them and what they'll do to be liked, whether that be being manipulative or whatever, or downright authoritarian. Great. Love the conflation again of people with NPD. Being compared to horrible people. Yep. But okay, this is a thing which gets introduced at this point, but this is very, very frustrating, where this gets brought up, but like, there's a true narcissist. There are people that are the true narcissists, and then there are people that are only somewhat narcissists. Like, that's really, like, don't fucking talk about that shit. Like, if someone meets the criteria, they meet the criteria, and you only need 5 of the 9 in order to meet the criteria. Stop bringing up how someone is more narcissistic than someone else. Like, stop that. Stop promoting that idea. It's a bad idea. Don't compare people to one another. Like, jeez. No true Scotsman fallacy too. Yeah, they live in a constant state of anxiety and hypervigilance. I don't know if that doesn't seem true to me. I think it depends on the person, but moving on. Oh yeah, and then here's the whole thing where it's like, but narcissism is not necessarily unhealthy. There's healthy narcissism. Shut up. Please. Please, no. Can we stop talking about healthy narcissists? Like, come on. I don't want to hear about this from ableists anymore. I don't want to get slapped with a bunch of demonization and then, oh, but don't worry, there's a healthy amount of narcissism. Like, please leave us alone. It's also, there's other words you can use for it, like, I don't know, having self-respect, being assertive. Assertive is a good word. You can use assertive. That's a word you can use. Stay away from byword. And then it finally moves on to the point in the video where it's a video, Loki, the MCU, and narcissism, and it finally gets on to the point of Loki. Which, I don't have a lot to say about Loki, I don't know anything about Loki, but let's see. The big question, is Loki a narcissist? Which, if I had watched it, I probably could have gone through the criteria myself and said whether or not Loki is a narcissist, but, you know, it's not like she does that either, so... and you'll see how, but she just goes, the Loki from Thor Ragnarok is probably the most narcissistic because he watches himself in a play and he doesn't care about another character. So yeah, I mean, I guess you can, I guess that's your proof. True. But then there's this thing where it's like, feels no empathy for Thor when he's getting the shit kicked out of him. In fact, enjoys it as a form of retribution. Okay, I know nothing about the MCU, but I do know that... What... Wasn't this in the Avengers where Loki gets the shit beaten... Like, he gets the shit kicked out of him in the original, like, Avengers by the Hulk, and I'm pretty sure, if I'm remembering the clip correctly, that's what Loki is cheering for here. So it's like, yeah, I think anyone would probably look at that and be like, oh, nice, someone else is experiencing what I experienced. He literally says, yes, that's how it feels. Like, is this specifically something where you're a narcissist and that's the only reason why you would enjoy someone getting their like, no. I'm pretty sure that's just... whatever. Whatever, though. What would I know? It's not like I know anything about the MCU. And in the end, any altruistic actions he takes is ultimately because it's the best action for him. So, yeah, if you're a selfish piece of shit, then you're a narcissist. And he saves the day at the end, but not out of a sense of empathy, but out of the, you know, correct sense that this path is the one that will get him the most adulation. If that's true, then with my kinks, I must be a monster. Yeah, you know. You're terrible. No. But yeah, and then talking about comparing this with Loki, who definitely can't be a narcissist. He displays narcissistic traits but completely falls short of having the disorder in the first episode. Which, again, I have to point out that any time that someone is a full-on villain, then they are someone who has NPD in Lindsay's brain. But as soon as they're the protagonist, then for some reason they fall short of having the disorder instead. There's more shit about how you can't love someone for its own sake if you're a narcissist. Like, you have to love them as an extension of yourself. There's this point where it's about, because Loki, talks about how, like, is self-aware of himself, then that means he's not a true narcissist, because a true narcissist would continue to deflect blame when confronted with all the timeline stuff he had stored in him. He wouldn't accept responsibility, and he certainly wouldn't have an honest come-to-Jesus moment after being punched in the head 400 times by the same person. Okay. He might say something manipulative to get her to stop hitting, but the Sith time loop would not bring about an honest moment of self-reflection in a true narcissist. Narcissists are eternal victims. Okay, this is a thing that's so bad. Because a lot of this is not like is trying to come off as objective, but is not using that kind of lingo. But using the word they are pathologically incapable of self-reflection is really bad. It's really bad to assign a word like that to this incorrect statement. Pathologically incapable. Like, you can't be capable of it at all. Jeez. They're pathologically incapable of self-reflection if it doesn't come from an outside source that they care about. This is also, like, weird because, like, how would you conceive that any neurotypical person, like, self-reflects? Like, wouldn't anyone only want to take the advice of someone that they respect and trust? Doesn't that just make sense for anyone? But no, for narcissists, it only... Like, okay, I would like to see Lindsay take the advice of some rando telling her that she's wrong about everything. And then, oh, that reflects poorly on you, because it... Because... Fuck. Self-reflection requires an external reference. Like, seriously? Right? How would you know that you're doing something wrong if there's, like, nothing else to model yourself off of? Like... It just doesn't make sense on so many levels. Why... It doesn't make sense, this idea. And there's this talk about how vulnerability is, like, terrible to, like, a narcissist, and that narcissists will never be vulnerable. Like, come on. It's called having someone that you trust in your life, that you are close to and you can be vulnerable with. That, like, anyone can do it. I mean, we can talk about this, but amongst people with personality disorders, there will be different terms that are used to refer to how they understand themselves in, like, relation to other people. So probably the one that everyone knows is well, people are more likely to know, is a favorite person, which for borderline personality disorder is basically someone that you become super attached to. You may shape your identity around them. You may basically do anything to gain their approval, and they can have a lot of influence on yourself. They're your favorite person, and to an extent that you wouldn't experience if you were neurotypical. For people with NPD, there is different terms. There is equal person, which is someone that you view as equal to yourself. Trying to remember. Chosen person, which is someone that you choose to, I guess, view above other people. And I think there was one other one. But there's different terms around. So basically, yes, people with NPD don't necessarily view everyone on the same level as they do, but there can be exceptions. There can be different circumstances. Me, for one, I have plenty of chosen people who they matter to me, and I respect their opinion and everything. I guess basically the takeaway that I'm trying to get at is that I don't want it to be like, oh, narcissists definitely care about everyone. Like, no. Lack of empathy is definitely a part of the diagnosis, and a lot of narcissists don't have a sense of empathy. But a lack of empathy doesn't mean that there aren't, like, people that they care about, or like anything whatsoever. It's it's like a mixed pot of different things. And really, like, you know, I think anyone has people that they just generally don't respect at all. It's not necessarily just people with NPD, but at least people with NPD can be more upfront about it. That's what you gotta respect people with personality disorders for. They do things that everyone else does, but at least they're honest. Their form of caring will look different. Yes, that's basically what I'm gonna say. It's like a mix of, like, a lack of empathy is only one of the criteria in the diagnosis. So they can definitely care the same as a neurotypical, but even when they don't, they may have different ways of expressing that they care. And not in like, and it's not like this thing where it's like oh, they only love others as an extension of themselves. It can I don't know, like it's just so bad the way it's presented here. It's so self-serving, which like, I just want people to know that people with MBD can definitely love you, but if they don't, like, it's not like a bad thing either if they don't love you the same way that a neurotypical would. It's fine. I hope that's something, like, what I wanted to get across came across in that whole tangent. But, yeah, what was it? What was this meant to be about? Yeah, but people with NPD will definitely have people that they're vulnerable with. Like, there's definitely people who are not afraid to be vulnerable, just not with strangers. So, and then it goes into the most relevant discussion in the discourse about how Loki cares about his alternate self, and it's like not an extension of whatever. Who cares about Loki? We care about the ableism in this. And this part is really infuriating, where she says a common tactic when narcissists compliment other people. A tactic. What horrible language. This is like in the same vein as, like, they are pathologically incapable. It's a tactic for people to compliment up. Jeez, like, why? Who would look at the world that way? I mean, if you do, like, fair enough, but I know plenty of people do not look at complimenting others as a tactic. At the least, if people are experiencing this, like, that's their own prerogative. Don't put this in your video. And then it goes, his history of narcissism is what makes him the most likely in the room to betray anyone at any given point. So, again, I love that we are making narcissism be like something that makes you awful and likely to betray people and serve your own ends. Jeez. Talking about more about the betrayal, more about the show, yada yada yada. There's all this stuff which isn't necessarily bad, but it's all been included, so you know I'm not taking things out of context. The video is just this terrible. I guess the wording is intentional to make it seem calculated rather than caring. Yes, that is exactly what I was trying to get across. You put it, yes, it's getting across that it's calculated, that it's manipulative, and that it can't be like someone genuinely caring about you because, oh, they have NPD, so how would they care about others? Jeez. But yeah, there's talk about how Loki is not a self-serving narcissist, he's self-sacrificial, so how can he be a narcissist? So then it goes to say that I think it's fair to say that Loki's writing is inconsistent. I know nothing about the show, so I wouldn't be able to say whether Loki's writing is inconsistent, but in the context of this video, I speculate that this is just because Loki was more sympathetic, so, oh, that must mean that it's inconsistent writing. But yeah, always find what someone writes and how they word things is telling. Yes. Yes, exactly. It really is. Like, not necessarily just the things they say, but trends in how they say things will reveal a lot in, like, how someone thinks. I mean, you see that with conservatives, right? Like, they talk about family values and stuff and all that shit, and there's just the way they talk about it where it's not the same as, they wouldn't word their values the same as someone who is progressive words their discussions about family. It's very different. But yeah. So she says the writing is inconsistent. Don't know if that's true. But MPD is not a disorder that you can character arc your way out of. This is true. It is incurable. And then it talks about how that, like, Loki having a character arc means that he must be cured. I don't think that's necessarily true. But whatever. But I don't think he's badly written. He's not an honest portrayal of a narcissist. Again, this shit is... shit about being a true narcissist is shit. Or how a growth in something is an epidemic if it is something they hate. Yeah. But yeah, then she rates Loki on a scale of a false narcissist to a true narcissist. like what? Girl, come on, girly pop. And then she goes like, again, this shit. But this isn't to say the MCU doesn't have anything meaningful to say about narcissism, but the most honest portrayal of a narcissist is Ego, who is another villain. Oh, great. I love when everyone you think is a narcissist is the bad guy. Yeah, I'm sure that's not indicative of everything in your brain that you think about narcissists. But yeah, it talks about the movie itself. I don't have shit to say about it. Anyone can watch the whole thing if they want. You can go out and do that. But I'm just talking about what I want to talk about here, obviously. But yeah, his thing I highlighted. So, Ego operates as the perfect portrait of a narcissist. He can't understand people's motivations that don't directly serve him, and challenging questions that center on other people's needs. I'd rather not subject myself to that. Yeah. You really shouldn't. I'm just saying that anyone else like watching it who's like, oh, anyone who wants to complain that, oh, you're taking things out of context or boo, you're like skipping over things. I'm just saying you can watch it yourself. But yeah, the perfect portrait of a narcissist though, because he can't understand other people's needs. Um, More shit about how narcissists can't love people genuinely. There's a lot of this. But again, here's like a thing. She brings up Tony Stark earlier. She brings up Loki and Loki. It's the same thing with Peter from Guardians of the Galaxy. You know, because he doesn't end up as a villain, then he can't be a narcissist. He's just extremely narcissistic. He nearly falls for Ego's plan. He nearly becomes a narcissist, but he's not quite there, which is not how that works. He, I bet you there's probably some people who headcanon him as being like a narcissist. Um, and that's not like, oh, they're not a narcissist because they didn't become outright evil. Like, come on. But yeah. Talking about how there's trauma and stuff in here. Yup. Um. Oh yeah, there's this shit brought up about how, like, joking about, oh, this character's an empath, but not like Shane Dawson, who isn't an empath, even though he says I like the shit with Shane Dawson being included. Like, at least the fictional characters, like the clips of them, they're like fictional, so who gives a fuck? But it's really weird to be making a dig at a real creator that you don't, that I don't, I mean, someone could correct me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure she's hasn't had like a personal history with. Why are you making a dig at some random ass YouTuber in your video? Why was this necessary? Also, the concept of empaths is really, I mean, people have talked about it plenty. It's just weird. Um, the people who say that they're very sensitive empaths are sometimes not empaths, and it's just, there's issues with the term, but we'll skip over that. Um, but yeah, talking about how narcissists prey on people's empathy, and children of narcissistic parents frequently learn to shapeshift as a survival mechanism, is a bunch of just shit about narcissistic abuse being brought up. Children of narcissists tend to be pathological pleasers or very cold. They exhaust themselves in a lifetime trying to please the unpleasable, blah blah blah. Oh, and I should say, I didn't say this before because, you know, to me it's very obvious, but when I say that this shit about narcissistic parents and narcissistic abuse isn't real, that doesn't mean that the abuse isn't real, but this whole concept of it being like because someone's a narcissist, that's like why they're abusive. That's not, you can describe behaviors like those behaviors independently of it being like because they're a narcissist, which again, you don't have the capacity to diagnose someone just off the bat. You're probably gonna mess things up. But like you don't need to describe people as a narcissist to be like to describe the abuse that you suffered, you can just say their behaviors like gaslighting, emotional abuse. I would say words that you can use. If someone's self-serving, self-centered, those are words you can use. That's not the word narcissism. Because when you use the word narcissism, it doesn't matter what you say about it. It will eventually reflect back onto people with NPD, and people will talk about how narcissists are terrible and they don't deserve any human rights or anything. So, you know, like, your abuse is real. Narcissistic abuse is not like a term that makes sense, though. Don't do that. There are abusive neurotypicals. Abuse isn't just from neurodivergent people. Yes, exactly. I literally talk about how, like, institutions are neurotypical and they do a ton of abuse, huh? It's definitely not the neurodivergent people who have their rights taken away and are put into, like, psych wards and shit that are the ones with the power and out here abusing people. But yeah. So given the way the MCU utilizes narcissists slash protagonists while not being narcissistic to the point, and this really sums up what I was saying, right? If you just thought that, oh, maybe she didn't mean it, protagonists who, while not being narcissistic to the point of disorder, are extremely narcissistic. So if you're not disordered if you're narcissistic, but you're not a villain. If you're a villain, then you're a true narcissist, but if you're not, then, oh, I guess you're not a narcissist. Like, come on. Yeah, and then it goes into this, like, kind of coming to the end of the video. We love narcissistic characters. We want to see the narcissism of the protagonist in ourselves. It's interesting that we hate IRL narcissists so much. Why is that? I really wonder why, huh? After making this video, the fact you can type that. Jeez. In some ways, and then there's this. In some ways, it's the same reason why addicts loathe alcoholics, or why people with anger issues loathe domestic abusers. We hate the most in others the thing we fear the most in ourselves. I like this imagining some random drug addicts that loathe alcoholics and imagining people with anger issues that loathe domestic abusers. I love all these wonderful imaginary people in this video. Does this person not know the word stigma? I have no clue. Who knows? Yeah. Yeah, and then she goes on about how Loki stops being a narcissist, which I can't speak on, but it kind of just seems like she doesn't like that he doesn't act like a villain. Suddenly he's Mr. Empathy, his behavior is no longer disordered, but relatable. Honestly, at this point, I think ChatGPT could do better, to be honest. I don't know about that, because it would feed off the same, like, top results that are... It would take from all the terrible resources about narcissism, so it probably wouldn't be better. It would probably actually look just like this. If we're being so real. But yeah, he's no longer a narcissist, but wrestling with his own narcissism. So if you're good, if you're not a true narcissist, if you're a villain, then... If you're a villain, then you're a narcissist, but if you're not a villain, then you're wrestling with narcissistic traits. Screw it, I'll try it later. Please don't, though. Please don't. I do not support AI. I do not condone this. But yeah, Jaja. That said, it's really common for people to talk about having been in relationships with people with other personality disorders. And maybe it was extremely difficult, but they don't talk about those people in terms of a condition that must be fundamentally avoided. This is kind of true. I mean, it should be pointed out that this isn't true for everything, but I think from what I've seen, yes, other personality disorders have definitely gotten it easier than MPD. They don't seem to be at the center of a huge, like, I'll mention this video later, but there's something about the narcissistic kind of scare that's happening that I should bring up. It's framed as a mental illness, so why don't we talk about narcissists in the same way? Why are narcissists always spiders who capture people in the web rather than people with behavioral disorders that don't have the tools to manage it? The worst thing about narcissists isn't that they're narcissists. Most of them want to be good people. They thrive off validation. The worst thing about narcissists is that they never seek treatment for their condition because they don't want the stigma of being a narcissist. And that is kind of true. I will say that is kind of true because, you end up with all this. When everyone says narcissist is shit, you don't want to go get treatment for being a narcissist. You wouldn't want to admit that to fit into that diagnosis. It would be terrible for your self-esteem. But I will note that there are people who go to get treatment, but then they rock up and they're told that they won't get treatment because they would be too difficult of a patient to deal with, or that just generally that narcissists are all abusive, so therapists and shit don't want to deal with them. So it's both common for narcissists to obviously not want to confront that they have the disorder, but it's also common that people with MPD will try and go and seek help and then get treated like shit for it. There's a mix of both happening. And then it says, because they don't get treatment, they hurt others, which isn't true. You can not be treated and you can still be disordered and not hurt people. And then it mentions, okay, this is a thing that I didn't write down every instance of this, but there's this one clip of Thanos, who she calls a narcissist, throwing this character off a cliff. This gets played several times throughout the video, just to remind you that narcissists are shit. It's bad. Also, the economy sucks. I can't even get shit diagnosed, let alone treated. That's also true. Another thing about not getting treated is that, it will be that if you do get treatment for it, sometimes you have to go to a specialist who, specifically deals with trauma and stuff. So that would cost more than just going to any old psychologist. There's also that contributes to things. Yeah. Talking more about how narcissistic parents are really abusive. They believe they're good people doing the right thing, and they don't understand why their children don't want to talk to them, no matter how many times their children have explained it. Imagining up people to be mad at. So fictional narcissists occupy an interesting space with regard to how we engage with real-life narcissists. People with narcissistic personality disorder are up to 5% of humans. You can double check that statistic. I wouldn't doubt it. And that's on the higher end with the wording, so it's probably less than that, but still up to 5%. A lot of people claim to have... Okay, this is really funny. A lot of people claim to have narcissistic parents, not because it's trendy, well, not just because it's trendy, but also just because it's a common disorder. So she's done this a couple times where sometimes she has the self-awareness to be like, people are just mentioning this because it's trendy, because of the scare, the narcissistic scare. But she doesn't put two and two together to be like, well, maybe this should be a thing that I look more into and don't make a whole video about. It just kind of casually gets mentioned. But it's not just that. It's not just that, so it's fine to talk about this. Yeah. And then she brings up critically, either you character arc narcissists or you kill them, which is bad. I agree with her. They can't cure their condition. Okay, wait, I didn't read this properly. Hang on. A narcissist can't cure their condition in the same way that someone with a less stigmatized disorder like major depression or... Never mind, I read that correctly. I thought I had misread this in like a critical way where it was being really shitty towards people with NPD. But no, it's fine. But that doesn't mean they can't evolve or improve as people. True. It's not curable, but it is treatable. True. And the hurdle here is just to get someone to want treatment in the first place. True. That's not just true of narcissists though. That's true of anyone. It is generally difficult to admit you have something wrong with you, especially if it's resulted in maybe fucking up other people. Not that narcissists necessarily do that, but if you are someone who has accidentally, or maybe not accidentally either, if you just generally hurt someone else, it can be hard to admit that you've been wrong. But, yeah, it's just rambling about how Loki was less narcissistic in service of making him more likable. There's a question, is it even possible to destigmatize narcissistic personality disorder in the same way? Yes. If so, what would that look like? Definitely not the way that it's being handled now. There are some characters with NPD that are... Well, not with NPD, but basically characters that get headcanoned as NPD usually have something going for them in terms of writing. Do more of that, I guess. I guess I can't really answer this. Not without me scripting things and having done research and everything to talk more in depth about it, but... Depression has lost its stigma? Okay, this is an interesting thing that gets brought up too, right? You know, I think it's safe to say that depression has lost a lot of its stigma. But it also isn't completely out of the woodworks, and you still do get those same stigmatized ideas depending on who you're talking to. I would say stigma is less common, but it's still a thing that exists. Like, it's easy to say that relative to other disorders, it definitely is less stigmatized. Like, I think we can all tell that. But it's not necessarily perfect, and it's very conditional, isn't it? Because depression is only less stigmatized, like anxiety is also less stigmatized, because it's something that neurotypicals can relate to. Like, during COVID, there was a lot of people getting depressed, so suddenly it's like, oh my gosh, you guys, I understand depression, and we should be nice towards depressed people. But the things that aren't, like, remain stigmatized are usually things like personality disorders or, like, schizophrenia, which, schizophrenia, you can experience psychotic symptoms, very easily. Like, it really should be less stigmatized, but, you know, it still is. It's generally things that neurotypical people just don't... like, they won't really commonly experience that they have a lot more stigma towards. fair. In my opinion, it's just got a different stigma to it for the most part. It's lost some stigma, but it still has a lot. It has just changed forms. Yeah. I mean, I literally talked about before how there will still be conceptions in some people where they view depression as being really selfish and like you're centering yourself by being miserable. There are still definitely harmful conceptions, but I think it's also safe to say relative to other disorders that it's more understood. For whatever that's worth in this society. There's also positive stigmas. You would have to specify that to me, and what you mean by positive stigmas. Because I think I might have an idea, but I just want to confirm what you think you're saying by that. I took a sip of water. Let me go back to this. I don't think there's like pretty much anything else that I have highlighted because the rest of this is just like an outro talking about different things. Yeah, this is the end. So the only thing that was like the other shit I was gonna mention, that was something I had an issue with in terms of this, is that she does do this thing where she goes like, oh, and if you want more content about narcissistic parents after I've talked about like narcissistic parents throughout this video, you can go read my book about it. So she makes an ableist video and then profits off of it by perpetuating stigma, which is what any book on narcissistic abuse does. It's profiting off of ableism, and it's not good. But yeah, like how it goes from being a thing of depression is selfish to depressed people need help all the time kind of thing. I don't know if that's the best way to explain it. A common positive stigma, Asians are good at math. Oh, I get what you mean. Stereotyping? I mean, in terms of depressed people need help all the time, I would say that kind of ties into, like, this isn't just for people with, mental, like, disorders and stuff. I would say this also applies to pretty much anyone with a disability, where you kind of become this object that needs to be like looked after like all the time instead of just being an autonomous person who just needs support. You get objectified. I think that's kind of the thing with that. But what I thought you were saying is that it's the whole, like, one thing that comes to mind is the idea of it, the tortured artist, you know? When people's depression makes them really artsy, they'll talk about, like, oh, but depression is, like, beautiful. This is also a thing that happens with disabilities. Like, your disability makes you better, and it's like, no. It's like, no, it really doesn't, like, a lot of the time. Like, it can make you better. I would say that narcissists can be more moral and good because of their narcissism. But generally, disorders will cause a disorder, so, yeah. But yeah, that was everything in this. The other thing I was gonna bring up is that Sarah Z is actually mentioned here in the script. And Sarah Z actually has a really good video, which is kind of how I found out about the extent of the narcissist scare. But yeah, the video is literally called The Narcissist Scare, and it's a really good video going into how, like, this whole thing about narcissistic abuse and how you should watch out for narcissists has progressed in this day and age, and how it's become a whole thing. It kind of a conservative backlash, really. It is really good, and it's not ableist. But I think I mentioned this earlier before you were even here, that it is funny because that video actually suggests that people go watch Lindsay Ellis, who made this ableist video. Like you have this really good video, and then Lindsay Ellis gets mentioned, and you get flashbanged. And it's just, yeah, it's rough. So that's everything that I had to say. And I just, I just had this little thing where I know that Lindsay may or may not see this at some point. Who fucking knows what'll happen when you put something on the internet? But I had this thing that I made that was just to be like, okay, if Lindsay ever, if this ever got back to her and she was like, oh, what can I do now that I realize that I'm wrong? This is what I think that you should do. I think that the video should be deleted, that there should be an apology, that there should be redirected, people should be redirected to accurate sources of people with NPD, and that money should be given back to people with NPD, like the community in some way. I have no idea how that would happen. The last two things, they're really more of an optional thing. But if it were possible, if there were somehow an organization out there that was made to support people with NPD, that would be what I think that the revenue should go back into, and that people should be directed back to. But yeah, you know what? Let me actually get, like, I don't want to end it on that. I think that Sarah Z's video is really worth showing off. So let me see if I can put up an image of that. Da 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 da. What am I doing? Honestly, this is an amazing video. I'm assuming you're watching the Sarah Z one. Yeah, it's really good. It's so much more well researched, and it's so much more respectful and everything. It's really good. Oh, you mean mine? Oh, thank you. I will ramble about Sarah Z's video. It's good. But I'm glad that you thought mine was fine, because it really is a bunch of loose rambling. I just settled for this because I knew that if I just left it off to, If I just continue to leave it as, oh, I'll like make it this video when it's high quality enough, when it's good enough, then it was never gonna come out. So I think this is the most ideal thing. So it could have been more well researched, but then again, I don't think it needs to be particularly well researched to point out the just wrong, like blatantly wrong, weird things that were in the script of Lindsay's video. It's just so strange. And off-putting. Here's the video you should watch. Here's what the thumbnail looks like. Where is this text that I had before? I'll just reword this one. Because I don't want this to just end on negativity. I mean this. Honestly would love to have a philosophical discussion with you. I mean, I could talk about my personal experiences and everything for a while. That's, yeah. This would just be rambling on, though. And I really want to say, other than the things I said, if someone is watching this back, don't go harass Lindsay Ellis. Just don't. I would recommend, if you really, like, honestly, just dislike the original video and then move on with your day. Like, don't go start harassing her, especially since, like, she's already been cancelled and shit. Like, she's been through the ringer, and being so harsh is not even gonna change her fucking mind. Don't go harassing people. But, yeah. Sarah Z is good. Between her and Philosophy 2, those two are who I subscribe to Nebula for. Yeah. This is a thing where it's really such a shame that Lindsay, she gets this credit from being like a part of Nebula, which has a bunch of high quality creators. And actually, Lindsay herself, I haven't checked her other videos, but I'm pretty sure they're better researched and better worded than this video, Loki, the MCU, and Narcissism. But this one was just bad and not researched, and it's really a shame. It's really a shame because I thought when I would try to watch it the first time that it was going to be good and it was going to actually be like a positive video for people with MPD, but it wasn't. It was just bad. Yeah, I guess, do you have anything else that you would like to maybe ask about? Any notes on my presentation that we could elaborate more on or anything? Because otherwise I don't want to drag this out too much for anyone who may watch this back. I mean, it was really good from a philosophical perspective, which is what I'm planning to study. You mostly nailed it. Ah, thank you. I'm glad me just complaining was able to get everything across. Yeah, I don't think that I missed anything. I think I was able to um I think I was able to cover everything that I wanted to. There may actually be more things wrong with the video that I didn't pick up, but I'm relatively sure I got at least the majority of it. So, yeah. Also Tissy, so maybe we could talk tomorrow. If you want to message me anytime, you can go for it. I do love to chat, though I don't often initiate it. I love having people to talk to, though. It makes me feel happy that I get some attention too, rather than it just being Soul. But yeah, with that, I will end this stream now. I hope that this video was informative, categorized under education. I hope this gives people a reference to not make a video like this and to maybe think a bit more about the things that they're being told. Please know that there are people that put out good research about NPD, and I'm not saying like distrust anyone who says anything about NPD, but like there's a reason why the people who like are making the most prominent like shit on NPD are not narcissists themselves, like are not people with NPD. They don't talk to narcissists, they just kind of imagine the people in their lives are all narcissists. And then they talk about how horrible they are, and it's just, you know, just go find a community of people with NPD and just listen to them talk amongst themselves for a bit, and you will learn so much about it that you would not learn otherwise, okay? In this social media age, it is so easy to go find the opinions and thoughts and learn about the struggles of minorities, or not necessarily minorities, but marginalized people, I think is more accurate to say. Go absolutely look for what people have to say and just listen, and immediately you will see that there's just so much wrong with the narrative of narcissists just being inherently evil. It's so messed up. And I have to emphasize that we didn't even get into a lot of the things that could be talked about. This was just meant to be a refutation. Like we already covered a lot just doing a refutation, but it's still not the full extent of everything you could possibly know about it. So go do that if you're curious about things. But anyways, I hope everyone has a good day. Go do something nice for yourself after listening to this, because this is a real downer of a video. Go look up pictures of horses. That's what I would do. But yeah, bye.